There's a silent force that shapes every result you experience in life. Most people never notice it. They spend years studying success, relationships, manifestation, abundance, and personal growth. Yet they continue to make one simple mistake that quietly drains their energy and weakens their power. The mistake is not what they do. It is what they reveal. Every word you speak carries energy. Every story you repeat strengthens an identity. Every detail you share creates a reaction, not only in the minds of others, but within your own subconscious. And whether you realize it or not, your subconscious mind is always listening. It records your words. It records your beliefs. It records the emotional meaning behind everything you say. This is why some people seem to move through life with unusual focus and inner strength. They are not necessarily smarter. They are not necessarily luckier. They simply understand something that most people overlook. Not everything needs to be shared. In a world that encourages constant exposure, constant posting, constant explaining, and constant validation, silence has become a forgotten form of wisdom. The most powerful transformations often happen in private. A seed grows in darkness. A child develops in the womb unseen. A diamond forms under pressure, hidden beneath the earth. Nature itself teaches the same lesson over and over again. What is valuable develops quietly before it becomes visible. Yet many people sabotage their own growth by exposing every dream, every struggle, every victory, and every secret before it has matured. Then they wonder why their energy feels scattered, why motivation disappears, why opportunities seem to dissolve, why progress slows down. Today, we are going to explore 7 things that spiritually aware people learn to keep private. These are not rules based on fear. They are principles based on wisdom. They are practices that help protect your focus, strengthen your inner world, and align your energy with the future you wish to create. As you listen, pay attention to which of these habits may be affecting your own life. You may discover that one simple change in what you choose to share can completely transform the way you experience success, relationships, abundance, and peace. Let's begin with the first and perhaps most important lesson of all. Never reveal your plans before they are ready. There is something fascinating about the human mind. The moment we decide to pursue a dream, a new version of ourselves begins to emerge. A vision appears. A possibility is born. A future starts calling us forward. But there's a hidden danger that most people never recognize. The danger is speaking about the dream before it has taken root within you. Think about a seed. When a seed is planted, it disappears beneath the soil. No one sees it. No one applauds it. No one celebrates it. Yet beneath the surface, an invisible transformation is taking place. Roots are forming. Energy is gathering. Life is preparing itself for expression. Imagine digging up that seed every day to show people how much progress it has made. Imagine exposing it to harsh winds before it has developed strength. It would never survive. Many dreams suffer the same fate. The moment people become excited about a new goal, they feel an overwhelming urge to tell everyone. They announce the business they're going to start. They describe the book they plan to write. They reveal the spiritual journey they are beginning. They explain the transformation they are about to create. And something subtle begins to happen. The energy that was meant for action starts being spent on conversation. The mind receives a temporary reward, a small emotional payoff. People react. They offer praise. They express excitement. They tell you how amazing your future sounds. And for a brief moment, your brain experiences a feeling similar to accomplishment. But nothing has actually been accomplished. The work remains undone. The dream remains unfinished. The vision remains potential rather than reality. Many people unknowingly become addicted to talking about the future instead of building it. They become collectors of intentions rather than creators of results. Years pass. Plans change. Ideas evolve. Yet the dream never fully materializes because the energy required for execution was continuously released through explanation. There is another reason silence is powerful. Not everyone can see your future. Most people interpret your vision through the limitations of their own experience. When you describe an extraordinary possibility to someone who has never imagined it for themselves, they often respond with doubt, not because they want to harm you, not because they are evil, but because they can only see what they have personally experienced. A person who has never escaped scarcity may struggle to understand abundance. A person who has never transformed their life may struggle to believe transformation is possible. A person who has abandoned their own dreams may unconsciously encourage you to abandon yours. This is why some of the greatest visionaries in history learned the value of protecting an idea during its fragile stages. Before a dream becomes reality, it requires belief. Before it becomes visible, it requires faith. And faith is easily weakened when exposed to constant criticism, skepticism, and unnecessary opinions. Your dream is not meant to be defended. It is meant to be developed. You do not need approval to begin. You do not need permission to evolve. You do not need validation to pursue what your soul knows is possible. The strongest intentions often grow in silence. They are nourished by commitment, protected by discipline, strengthened by action. Eventually, a day arrives when explanations are no longer necessary. The results speak. The transformation becomes visible. The dream no longer needs words because reality has become the evidence. There's a profound spiritual lesson hidden here. The universe responds more powerfully to embodiment than to announcement. What you consistently do carries greater creative force than what you repeatedly say. Anyone can describe a future. Few people are willing to build one. So ask yourself, what dream are you currently talking about more than you are working on? What vision deserves greater protection? What future would grow stronger if you spent less time explaining it and more time living it? Sometimes the greatest act of faith is not speaking. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is quietly becoming. And when the time is right, the world will see what your silence was creating all along. There is a reason why the most meaningful things in life are often invisible. Love cannot be touched. Trust cannot be measured. Connection cannot be weighed. Yet these unseen forces shape the quality of our lives more than almost anything else. A healthy relationship is not built from grand gestures. It is built from countless invisible moments. A shared glance, a quiet understanding, a difficult conversation, a moment of forgiveness, a promise honored when no one else is watching. The deepest bonds are formed in private, and perhaps that is why exposing every detail of a relationship to the outside world can slowly weaken its foundation. Modern culture encourages constant sharing. People document their vacations, their anniversaries, their arguments, their celebrations, their disappointments. Every experience becomes content. Every emotion becomes a public announcement. But there is a hidden cost to this habit. The moment a relationship becomes a performance, authenticity begins to fade. Instead of asking, how do we feel about each other? People begin asking, how do we appear to others? And that subtle shift changes everything. The relationship is no longer centered on connection. It becomes centered on perception. The energy that once nourished intimacy is redirected toward maintaining an image. Many couples spend enormous amounts of energy trying to look happy rather than becoming happy. They carefully curate what others see while neglecting what truly matters behind closed doors. Eventually, the image grows stronger than the reality. And when that happens, emotional distance begins to form. Real love requires space to breathe. It requires room for imperfection. It requires freedom to grow without being constantly observed, analyzed, or judged by outsiders. Think of a flame burning inside a lantern. Protected from strong winds, it grows steadily. But remove the glass and expose it to every gust of air, and the flame becomes vulnerable. Relationships work much the same way. Not every challenge needs an audience. Not every disagreement requires outside opinions. Not every joyful moment needs public validation. Some experiences become more meaningful when they are simply lived. There is another layer to this lesson that many people overlook. When you repeatedly discuss your relationship with others, you invite additional perspectives into a space that was originally designed for two people. Sometimes those perspectives are helpful, but often they are projections. Someone who has been betrayed may project distrust. Someone who feels lonely may project resentment. Someone who carries unresolved wounds may project fear. Without realizing it, you begin viewing your relationship through the lens of other people's experiences rather than your own reality. A simple disagreement suddenly becomes evidence of a deeper problem. A temporary misunderstanding becomes a crisis. A small imperfection becomes something to worry about. The relationship itself has not changed. Only your perception has. This is why emotional wisdom requires discernment. Seeking guidance when necessary is healthy. Seeking support during genuine hardship can be valuable, but there is a difference between seeking wisdom and seeking constant validation. One strengthens a relationship, the other weakens it. True intimacy is built upon trust. Trust grows when both people know that their vulnerabilities are safe, that private conversations remain private, that moment of weakness will not become stories for public discussion, that the sacred space between two souls will be respected. Every relationship contains unseen treasures, shared dreams, private struggles, moments of healing, moments of growth. These treasures become more valuable when they are protected, not hidden out of fear, protected out of reverence. There is something deeply spiritual about this. The most powerful connections often flourish away from public attention. Just as roots grow beneath the earth before a tree reaches toward the sky, relationships develop strength through countless unseen experiences. People admire the visible tree, but the roots are what sustain it. The same is true for love. The world may see the smiles, the photographs, the celebrations, but the true strength of a relationship lives in the invisible foundation beneath it. The conversations no one hears, the sacrifices no one notices, the loyalty no one applauds, the forgiveness no one witnesses. Those are the roots, and roots grow best underground. Ask yourself this: how much of your relationship is being lived for genuine connection? And how much is being influenced by the desire to be understood, admired, or validated by others? The answer may reveal something important. Love does not become stronger because more people know about it. Love becomes stronger when two people continue choosing each other day after day, even when nobody is watching. The most beautiful relationships are not necessarily the loudest. They are often the quietest. The ones built patiently, the ones protected carefully, the ones rooted deeply enough to withstand any storm. And perhaps that is the real secret. Not everyone needs access to what is sacred. Some things become more powerful when they are honored in silence. Money is one of the most misunderstood forces in human life. People spend years chasing it, worrying about it, measuring themselves through it, comparing their lives to others because of it. Yet money itself is neither good nor bad. It is not a measure of your worth. It is not a measure of your intelligence. It is not a measure of your spiritual evolution. And it is certainly not a measure of your value as a human being. Money is a tool, nothing more, nothing less. But many people unconsciously allow money to become their identity. And the moment that happens, suffering begins. Have you ever noticed how often people introduce themselves through financial labels? I'm broke. I'm struggling. I'm just trying to survive. Or on the opposite side, I'm successful. I'm wealthy. I've made it. At first, these may seem like harmless descriptions, but your subconscious mind is always listening. Every repeated statement becomes part of the story you tell yourself. And eventually, that story becomes a lens through which you experience reality. The danger is not having money. The danger is becoming attached to what money says about you. When a person believes they are their bank account, their emotional state rises and falls with every financial fluctuation. A good month creates confidence. A bad month creates fear. An investment succeeds and they feel powerful. An investment fails and they feel worthless. Their inner peace becomes dependent upon external conditions. And anything dependent on external conditions can be taken away. True abundance begins when your sense of self no longer depends on what you possess. Think about the ocean. The ocean does not become less powerful because one wave rises and another falls. Its nature remains unchanged. Likewise, your true value remains untouched regardless of temporary financial circumstances. Many of the most successful individuals in history experienced periods of loss. Businesses failed. Investments collapsed. Fortunes disappeared. Yet they rebuilt. Why? Because they had not lost the most important asset. They had not lost themselves. The mindset that created abundance still existed within them. The creativity remained. The discipline remained. The vision remained. The courage remained. Those qualities were always more valuable than the money itself. This is where many people become trapped. They spend so much time focusing on what they have that they forget to develop who they are becoming. But money tends to flow toward value, and value is created through growth, through learning, through service, through mastery, through contribution. The person you become ultimately determines what you attract. This principle appears in nearly every spiritual tradition. External conditions are reflections of internal states. Not always immediately, not always perfectly, but consistently over time. A fearful mind tends to create fearful decisions. A confident mind tends to recognize opportunities. A grateful mind notices possibilities that an anxious mind overlooks. The outer world often mirrors the patterns established within. This does not mean you should ignore financial realities. It does not mean pretending problems do not exist. Wisdom requires honesty, but honesty is different from identification. You can acknowledge a challenge without becoming the challenge. You can experience temporary scarcity without defining yourself as a scarce person. You can face financial setbacks without adopting the identity of failure. One is an experience. The other is a belief. And beliefs are powerful. Consider how many people spend decades reinforcing limitations through language. They repeat phrases such as, "Money always disappears," "I never get ahead," "Rich people are different," "Success isn't for people like me." These statements may feel true because they have been repeated so often, but repetition does not create truth. It creates familiarity, and the subconscious often mistakes familiarity for reality. Imagine carrying a backpack filled with stones. Each limiting belief is another stone added to the load. Eventually, the burden becomes so familiar that you forget it is there. You assume life is supposed to feel heavy. You assume struggle is normal. You assume expansion is for someone else. Yet the moment you begin questioning those beliefs, something remarkable happens. The weight starts to lift. New possibilities become visible. New choices emerge. New opportunities appear where none seemed to exist before. The external world may not change overnight, but your relationship with it changes immediately, and that changes everything. There's also another trap hidden within financial success. Many people believe they will finally feel complete once they reach a certain number, a certain income, a certain house, a certain level of recognition. But the finish line keeps moving. What once seemed extraordinary becomes normal. What once felt abundant begins to feel insufficient. The mind creates a new target, then another, Then another. This is why some of the wealthiest individuals remain deeply dissatisfied. They achieve financial success, but never cultivated inner fulfillment. They expanded their possessions while neglecting their consciousness. And no amount of money can fill a void created by disconnection from oneself. True abundance includes financial well-being, but it also includes peace, health, purpose, meaning, connection, freedom, presence. Without these qualities, wealth often becomes another form of emptiness. The spiritually mature person understands this. They appreciate money without worshiping it. They respect it without fearing it. They use it without becoming attached to it. Most importantly, they refuse to allow numbers to determine their identity because they understand a profound truth. You are not your income. You are not your debt. You are not your investments. You are not your possessions. You are not your financial history. You are the awareness observing all those things. And awareness is infinitely greater than any number attached to a bank account. So the next time you're tempted to define yourself through money, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, if every dollar, would your kindness remain, your creativity, your resilience, your wisdom, your ability to love, your capacity to learn, your spirit? Those are the treasures that create abundance. Those are the assets no market can crash. Those are the foundations upon which a truly prosperous life is built. Because when you stop measuring your worth through money, something extraordinary happens. You become free enough to create more of it, not from fear, not from desperation, but from alignment with the person you were always meant to become. There's a profound difference between experiencing a problem and becoming a problem. Most people do not realize when the transition happens. At first, they say, I am going through a difficult time. But slowly the language changes. My life is difficult. Then, nothing ever works for me. And eventually, this is just who I am. A temporary circumstance becomes a permanent identity. A passing storm becomes a lifelong climate. And once the mind accepts an identity, it begins searching for evidence to support it. This is one of the most overlooked laws of consciousness. Your mind is constantly collecting proof for what it believes about you. If you believe you are unlucky, it notices every disappointment. If you believe you are abandoned, it notices every rejection. If you believe life is against you, it interprets every challenge as confirmation. The mind becomes a servant to the story. This is why some people remain trapped in cycles that last years or even decades. Not because the problem is stronger than them, but because the identity has become stronger than the possibility of change. Think about how often people introduce themselves through their struggles. They become the person with anxiety, the person with debt, the person who was betrayed, the person who never gets opportunities, the person who always suffers. The problem becomes a badge, a label, a role, and the longer that role is repeated, the more difficult it becomes to imagine life without it. The ego often prefers a familiar pain to an unfamiliar freedom, because freedom requires transformation, and transformation requires letting go of who you think you are. Many spiritual traditions teach the same principle in different ways. You are not your thoughts. You are not your emotions. You are not your circumstances. You are the awareness observing them. Imagine standing beside a river. Leaves float past on the water. Some leaves are beautiful. Some are damaged. Some are heavy. Some are light. But none of them are the river itself. Your experiences are the leaves. Your consciousness is the river. Yet most people grab onto a painful leaf and carry it for years. They introduce it to everyone they meet. They tell the story repeatedly. They replay it mentally. They keep it alive long after the original event has ended, and then they wonder why the pain never leaves. What you continuously feed becomes stronger. Every time you retell the story, you reinforce the neural pathway. You strengthen the emotional connection. You deepen the groove. The brain becomes more efficient at producing the same experience. This is why endless complaining rarely creates healing. Talking about a problem is not the same as solving it. Repeating a wound is not the same as releasing it. There's a place for honest reflection. There's a place for seeking support. There's a place for wisdom and guidance. But there is also a danger in rehearsing suffering until it becomes your identity. Notice something remarkable. The most powerful people you meet are not necessarily people without problems. They are people who refuse to become their problems. They experience loss. They experience setbacks. They experience heartbreak. Yet they maintain a deeper awareness. They understand that challenges are chapters, not entire books. A chapter may be painful. A chapter may be confusing. A chapter may be dark. But a chapter is not the whole story. And your current struggle is not your final definition. There is a question worth asking yourself. If this problem disappeared tomorrow, who would I become? Sit with that question. Many people are surprised by the answer, because beneath the struggle is a version of themselves they have forgotten, a version that is creative, powerful, peaceful, confident, inspired. That version still exists. It has never disappeared. It has only been covered by layers of identification. Spiritual awakening often begins when you stop saying, "This is who I am," and start saying, "This is what I am experiencing." One statement creates imprisonment. The other creates possibility. The universe responds differently when you stop worshiping your limitations. Energy begins moving differently. Opportunities appear differently. Solutions emerge more naturally, not because reality suddenly changed, but because your perception changed. And perception is the doorway through which reality enters consciousness. There is another reason to be careful about constantly sharing your problems. Most people cannot see beyond their own fears. When you describe your situation, they often respond from the limitations of their own experiences. They tell you what they would do, but they are not you. They tell you what is impossible, but their limits are not your limits. They tell you why it cannot work, because they have forgotten how powerful the human spirit truly is. If you want advice, seek wisdom. Seek those who have walked where you want to go. Seek those who have transformed themselves. Seek those who inspire expansion rather than contraction. But do not make suffering your primary conversation, because whatever occupies your attention eventually occupies your identity. And whatever occupies your identity eventually shapes your destiny. The greatest transformations in history began with people refusing to define themselves by present circumstances. They saw beyond appearances, beyond limitations, beyond temporary conditions. They understood a timeless truth. You are always greater than the challenge standing in front of you. And when you remember that truth, something extraordinary begins to happen. The problem may still exist, but it no longer owns you, and that changes everything. 5. Never seek validation for your victories. One of the most subtle traps on the spiritual path is a need for recognition. Not money, not success, not achievement. Recognition. The desire for someone else to look at your life and say, "You made it. You are impressive. You are successful. You are worthy." At first, this desire seems harmless. After all, everyone enjoys appreciation. Everyone enjoys encouragement. Everyone enjoys being seen. But there is a hidden danger when your happiness becomes dependent on the approval of others. Because the moment your joy depends on external validation, your power no longer belongs to you. It belongs to the crowd. And crowds are unpredictable. The same people who praise you today may criticize you tomorrow. The same people who celebrate your success may ignore your next achievement. The same people who applaud your victories may secretly resent your growth. If your self-worth is built upon their reactions, Your emotional state becomes a roller coaster controlled by forces outside yourself. True power begins when your sense of value comes from within. Think about a tree growing in a forest. It does not stop and ask the birds for permission to grow. It does not seek approval from a wind. It does not require applause from the sky. It simply follows its nature, quietly, consistently, faithfully, and because it follows its nature, it becomes strong. Human beings often do the opposite. The moment something good happens, they feel an urge to announce it, to display it, to prove it, to make sure everyone knows. But why? That question is worth exploring. Why do we feel compelled to share every success? Sometimes it is genuine excitement, but often there is something deeper, a hidden need to be acknowledged, a hidden fear that without recognition, the achievement somehow loses value. Yet an achievement does not become real because someone notices it. It becomes real because it happened. Your growth is real even if nobody applauds. Your healing is real even if nobody understands it. Your progress is real even if nobody sees it. The soul does not measure success by likes, comments, praise, or attention. The soul measures success by alignment, by authenticity, by expansion. Many people unknowingly sabotage themselves because they receive emotional rewards too early. The brain releases pleasure not only when we accomplish something, but also when we talk about accomplishing it. This creates an interesting psychological effect. The announcement becomes a substitute for the achievement. The validation becomes a substitute for the work. The applause becomes a substitute for the transformation, and slowly the momentum fades. This is why some dreams remain dreams. They were celebrated before they were built. Protected dreams have power. Exposed dreams often become weakened by distraction. Imagine carrying a small flame through a strong wind. Would you hold it high for everyone to see? Or would you shield it carefully until it becomes a fire strong enough to sustain itself? Your goals deserve the same protection. Your victories deserve the same wisdom. This does not mean you should never celebrate. Celebration is sacred. Gratitude is sacred. Acknowledging progress is important. But there is a difference between celebration and seeking validation. One comes from fullness. The other comes from emptiness. One says, I am grateful. The other says, please tell me I am enough. And no amount of praise can permanently satisfy a need that must ultimately be fulfilled within. Many people spend years chasing approval. They earn more money. They buy larger homes. They collect achievements. They accumulate status. Yet they still feel empty. Why? Because external recognition can never fill an internal void. It is like pouring water into a bucket with no bottom. The satisfaction disappears almost as quickly as it arrives. The next achievement becomes necessary. Then the next. Then the next. The cycle never ends. Spiritual maturity begins when you learn to witness your own growth, to appreciate your own progress, to become your own source of encouragement. This is not arrogance. It is self-respect. Arrogance needs witnesses. Self-respect does not. Arrogance performs. Self-respect simply exists. Some of the greatest transformations happen in silence. No audience. No spotlight. No applause. Just a human being making a decision to become more conscious than they were yesterday. A person overcoming an addiction nobody knew about. A person healing a wound nobody could see. A person choosing forgiveness instead of resentment. A person waking up each day and continuing despite fear. These victories rarely make headlines, yet they are often more significant than anything the world celebrates. Because true success is not measured by what you gain. It is measured by who you become. And who you become is an intimate journey between you and your own consciousness. There is a beautiful freedom that appears when you stop needing everyone to understand your path. You stop explaining yourself. You stop defending yourself. You stop performing for approval. You simply continue growing. You continue evolving. You continue becoming. And eventually something remarkable happens. Your energy changes. People notice a quiet confidence, a grounded presence, a sense of certainty. Not because you are trying to impress them, but because authenticity naturally radiates. The strongest people in the world are rarely the loudest. They do not need to convince anyone of their value. They know who they are. And that knowledge creates a peace that external validation can never provide. When your victories come, welcome them. Be grateful. Celebrate them privately if you wish. Share them with trusted people if it feels right. But do not make the approval of others the measure of your worth, because your worth was never something another person had the authority to give. And it is certainly not something they can take away. The moment you understand that, you become free. Free from comparison. Free from performance. Free from the exhausting need to prove yourself. And from that freedom, a deeper form of success begins to emerge. One that is rooted not in recognition, but in truth. There's an ancient spiritual principle that appears in many traditions around the world. What you focus on grows. Most people understand this when it comes to goals. They understand it when it comes to dreams. They understand it when it comes to abundance. But few people realize it also applies to criticism, to judgment, to gossip, to speaking negatively about others. Every time you focus intensely on another person's flaws, you are directing precious mental and emotional energy away from your own evolution. Think about how much time people spend discussing the mistakes of others. Entire conversations revolve around criticism. Entire friendships are built upon shared complaints. Entire communities bond through negativity. And yet, after all that discussion, very little changes. The person being criticized continues living their life. The only person whose energy becomes depleted is the one doing the criticizing, because attention is a form of energy. And wherever your attention goes, your life force follows. Imagine carrying a bucket of water through a desert. Would you pour it onto someone else's garden while your own plants are dying? Of course not. Yet this is exactly what happens whenever we become obsessed with the faults of others. We neglect our own growth while becoming experts on someone else's imperfections. The truth is that every human being is unfinished. Every person is learning. Every person is healing. Every person is carrying battles that may be invisible from the outside. The person you criticize may be struggling with fears you cannot see. The person you judge may be fighting a private war. The person you dismiss may be carrying pain that would break your heart if you understood it. This does not mean you must approve of every action. It does not mean you abandon discernment. Wisdom requires discernment, but discernment and judgment are not the same thing. Discernment observes. Judgment condemns. Discernment learns. Judgment attacks. Discernment creates clarity. Judgment creates separation. One comes from awareness. The other comes from ego. Many people gossip because it creates a temporary sense of superiority. For a brief moment, criticizing someone else makes them feel elevated, but it is an illusion. Real confidence never requires another person to be smaller. Real strength never depends on another person's weakness. Real power never needs an enemy. The most secure people are often the most compassionate, not because they are perfect, but because they understand imperfection. They have faced their own shadows. They have confronted their own flaws. They know what it feels like to stumble, and that knowledge creates humility. There is something else worth considering. The qualities that trigger us most strongly in others often reveal something hidden within ourselves. Perhaps not the exact behavior, but a related wound, a fear, an insecurity, an unresolved lesson. The people who irritate us can become unexpected teachers, not because they are right, but because they reveal where our consciousness still has room to grow. This is why spiritual masters throughout history have encouraged self-observation before criticism. Before asking, what is wrong with them? Ask, what is this situation showing me about myself? That single shift can transform your life, because now every difficult person becomes an opportunity for awareness. Every challenge becomes a mirror. Every irritation becomes a lesson. And suddenly the world is no longer filled with enemies. It is filled with teachers. There is also a practical reason to avoid negative speech. Words influence the emotional atmosphere of your own mind. Every sentence you speak shapes your internal state. When you spend hours criticizing, complaining, and attacking, your nervous system absorbs that energy. The mind cannot easily distinguish between negativity directed outward and negativity directed inward. You become surrounded by the emotional environment you create. Speak bitterness long enough, and bitterness becomes familiar. Speak resentment long enough, and resentment becomes comfortable. Speak negativity long enough, and negativity becomes your default lens. Then something subtle begins to happen. You start expecting the worst. You start noticing flaws everywhere. You start attracting experiences that confirm your perspective. The world appears darker, not necessarily because it changed, but because your perception changed. And perception is incredibly powerful. Two people can experience the same event and walk away with entirely different realities. One sees opportunity. The other sees disaster. One sees growth. The other sees failure. The difference often lies in what they have trained themselves to focus on. When you refuse to participate in gossip and criticism, something remarkable happens. Your energy becomes cleaner. Your mind becomes calmer. Your conversations become more meaningful. You create space for wisdom. You create space for creativity. You create space for genuine connection. This does not mean you become naive. It does not mean you ignore harmful behavior. Sometimes boundaries are necessary. Sometimes truth must be spoken. Sometimes difficult conversations must happen. But there is a difference between addressing a problem and feeding negativity. One creates resolution. The other creates suffering. The next time you feel tempted to criticize someone, pause for a moment. Ask yourself, is this helping anyone? Is this creating growth? Is this moving my life forward? Or am I simply feeding a habit? That question alone can change the direction of a conversation, and perhaps even the direction of a life. Because every moment spent attacking others is a moment not spent building yourself. Every moment spent judging others is a moment not spent understanding yourself. Every moment spent focusing on someone else's darkness is a moment not spent expanding your own light. The most powerful people are rarely those who can identify every flaw around them. The most powerful people are those who remain committed to their own growth regardless of what others are doing. Continua. They understand a profound truth. Your future is created by the energy you cultivate within yourself, not by the mistakes you observe in others. And that truth leads us directly to the final principle. Of all the things a person can give you, trust may be the most valuable, more valuable than money, more valuable than status, more valuable than opportunity, because trust is invisible, yet it is a foundation upon which every meaningful relationship is built. Without trust, there can be no true friendship, no true partnership, no true love, no true leadership. Trust is the bridge between two souls. And once that bridge is broken, rebuilding it can take years, sometimes a lifetime. Yet, many people treat trust carelessly. Someone shares a private struggle, a personal fear, a hidden dream, a painful mistake, and instead of honoring that vulnerability, they pass it along. They repeat it. They turn it into conversation. They transform something sacred into entertainment. What they fail to realize is that every betrayal of trust leaves a mark not only on the other person, but on themselves. Because trust is more than a social agreement. It is an energetic agreement. When someone trusts you, they are silently saying, I believe you'll protect what I am giving you. And what they are giving you is not merely information. They are giving you a piece of themselves, their vulnerability, their humanity, their authentic truth that is sacred. Many people wonder why opportunities seem to disappear from their lives, why meaningful relationships become difficult, why they struggle to attract deeper connections. Sometimes the answer is simpler than they think. Life responds to the way we handle responsibility, and trust is one of the greatest responsibilities we can receive. If you cannot protect what is small, how can you be trusted with what is great? Think about the most respected people you know. Chances are they share a common quality. People feel safe around them, not because they are perfect, not because they are wealthy, not because they are powerful, but because they can be trusted. You can speak openly with them. You can share your fears, your dreams, your mistakes, and you know those things will remain protected. That kind of person becomes a magnet for meaningful relationships. People naturally gravitate toward safety, toward integrity, toward reliability. Trust creates influence. Trust creates opportunities. Trust creates abundance, not because of some mystical force, but because trust is the currency of human connection. Without it, everything becomes fragile. There is another aspect to this that most people overlook. Every time you betray someone's confidence, a subtle tension appears inside you, even if nobody discovers it, even if there are no immediate consequences. A part of your consciousness knows, a part of you remembers, and that inner conflict creates friction. You become less aligned with yourself, less grounded, less peaceful. Integrity is not about what others know. Integrity is about what you know. It is the ability to look at yourself honestly and feel no need to hide, to know that your actions and your values are in harmony. That is true power, not the power to impress, not the power to dominate, but the power to live without internal division. Spiritual growth is often misunderstood. People imagine it is about learning more information, reading more books, listening to more teachings, accumulating more knowledge. But wisdom is not measured by what you know. Wisdom is measured by how you live. And one of the clearest signs of wisdom is the ability to hold another person's trust with care. Because when you can be trusted, life begins trusting you as well. People trust you with opportunities, with leadership, with friendships, with love, with greater responsibilities. Not because you demanded those things, but because you became the kind of person capable of receiving them. Trust is earned in small moments: a private conversation, a confidential story, a personal confession, a vulnerable truth. These moments may seem insignificant, but they reveal character, and character ultimately shapes destiny. The world does not need more people who know spiritual concepts. The world needs more people who embody them, people whose words can be trusted, people whose actions match their values, people whose presence creates safety rather than fear. Imagine what would happen if every person became known as someone who could be trusted completely. Relationships would deepen, communities would strengthen, families would heal, and inner peace would become far more common, because trust is not merely something we give to others. Trust is something we become. And when you become trustworthy, you create a life built upon a foundation that cannot easily be shaken. As we come to the end of this journey together, notice what all 7 principles have in common. At first glance, they seem unrelated. Do not reveal your plans too early. Do not expose the sacred details of your relationship. Do not define yourself by money. Do not make your problems your identity. Do not seek validation for your victories. Do not speak negatively about others. Do not betray someone's trust. But beneath the surface, they are all pointing toward the same truth. Protect your energy. Protect your consciousness. Protect the sacred space where your reality is being created. Most people spend their lives leaking energy without realizing it. They leak energy through unnecessary explanations, through constant comparison, through validation seeking, through gossip, through oversharing, through fear, through the need to prove themselves. And then they wonder why they feel exhausted, why their goals move slowly, why peace feels so distant. The answer is not always to do more. Sometimes the answer is simply protect what is already yours. Your attention, your focus, your inner world, because everything begins there. The life you experience on the outside is often a reflection of what has been cultivated on the inside. A peaceful mind creates a different reality than a chaotic one. A focused consciousness creates a different future than a distracted one. A guarded flame burns longer than a flame exposed to every passing wind. There's great wisdom in silence. Not silence born from fear. Not silence born from insecurity. But silence born from strength. The kind of silence that allows a seed to become a tree. The kind of silence that allows a dream to become reality. The kind of silence that allows transformation to occur without interference. Perhaps the most powerful lesson is this. Not everything sacred needs an audience. Some things grow best in private. Some victories shine brightest when they are not announced. Some transformations become strongest when they are protected. The world teaches us to reveal everything, to share everything, to broadcast every thought, every emotion, every achievement. But the soul often moves differently. The soul understands timing. The soul understands patience. The soul understands the power of the unseen. So as you leave this message, ask yourself, what energy have I been giving away? What parts of my life need greater protection? What dreams deserve more silence? What thoughts deserve more awareness? And what kind of person am I becoming through the words I speak each day? Because your words are never just words. They are seeds, and every seed eventually bears fruit. Choose them wisely, guard them carefully, and trust that what is meant to grow in your life will grow far more powerfully when it is rooted in awareness, integrity, and inner peace. For in the end, the greatest power has never been found in what you tell the world. It has always been found in what you quietly cultivate within yourself. And that is where true transformation begins.